Hey now. Oh, we caught Carl. We caught him having a little beer in between the opening video. My gosh. Oh my gosh. Do you like the way that intro video just abruptly ends?
Well, it sounds like Yardbirds on acid. Yeah, sounds quite. Yeah, it sounds. Well, no, it just sounds real. Yeah, just boom, boom.
Boom
Sounds good.
boom. Yeah, sounds like the Rolling Stones in '63. Like at a rave up.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It sounds like an early '60s blues rave up.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Real Jeff Becky sounds Jeff Becky, to be honest. Yeah.
Wow.
No, sounds good. I like it.
Awesome.
Sounds
Hey,
real good.
good to see you, brother. Good to see you. Always a highlight of the channel when we have Carl on. Always a highlight, and obviously you would be with us more often than not. But work has its spell over
Yeah.
you.
Oh no. It's fine. I can do Saturday slots, maybe Fridays. Sundays is too tough, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
Friday sounds like a goer because I do the Sunday evening show with Simon, which is good.
Yep.
And I'm going to do probably a fortnightly show with another guy, Canadian guy, a Van Halen nut called Steve Anderson. And then if you
Nice.
and I can, do a show. What I'm trying to do, my friend, I make no apologies about this. I'm trying to grow the channel. When you and I first started doing this, it was only about you and I hanging out talking about the Rolling Stones. It had nothing to do with building the channel. We didn't ask for subscribers. We just hung out and spoke, talked, which is
that's good. Yeah.
which is a cool thing to do.
It's like a podcast. I mean, nobody wants a predictable podcast. If you can mix it up a little bit, you cast the net wider.
Look, I'm not interested in casting it too wide. I want to stick within the safety limits of what I know, which is Carl is a Kiwi. G'day DT. Someone's asking whether you're an Australian or a New Zealander. No,
Yeah.
Carl is a Kiwi. So yeah, like I said, it would be good for you and I then to talk about maybe doing a weekly or fortnightly show on Fridays for an hour or so. I would love that. I would love to get back and chit-chatting with you. I know that Sundays is difficult because of business, and I understand that.
It's just getting ready for the week. It's you finish all your open homes, and then you got to iron about 7 shirts and get all your food ready, and it's just real estate's a bit different, Yeah, that's all right. It's all right. It's a bit hectic.
Yeah. Oh well, that's good, and I hope we don't want to give too much away, but you're doing well, you're doing good, you're hanging in there, and that's good, and a lot of people are on your side, and
thank you.
You just keep at it. So, look, I like the idea that you mentioned a while ago. I think it was about 6 months ago when we were talking about future shows. May have even. Oh no, it was during lockdown, and we all knew that the Get Your Yayas album and that tour was coming up, and we thought maybe wouldn't it be good to get together and had a show on that tour and that album. Well, guess what? That time has arrived. 1969.
Yeah. Oh no, it was great because as most of you probably know, and I still think about it to this day. We were fortunate 2 months ago to have Sam Cutler as a guest speaker, and he was the MC for the whole tour. He was he was a big part of that tour. He was the opening. He was the tour manager slash opening MC. You know. And he gave us an insight into basically the guys just being regular guys, family guys.
Yep.
These were actually, I read an article about Lemmy. He real quick. I won't get too far off. Lemmy from Motorhead. He said his band was the Beatles. He reckons they were tough Liverpool nuts, Liverpool Kiss. Ringo Starr was tough. He reckons the Stones were Nancy boys.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day. I'm glad we got both Beatles and the Stones, but getting back to the topic, the '69 tour, get your ears out, Sam Cutler. I think to this day, maybe the greatest, if not one of the greatest live albums of all time.
Look, I'm not going to argue with you, and I think we've done a couple of shows where we've probably discussed aspects of the album. I don't think we've done a and we've also discussed the '69 tour versus the '72 tour. Now, I'm on record saying, if anyone's watching this replay, that the '72 tour was the highlight for me as far as Rolling Stone tours go. So, I mentioned to Carl a couple of days ago, quite honestly and openly, that I take a step back from that view, and I look now at the '69 tour as the tour for me. Only because there were a lot of things that happened that were firsts. It was the first tour, that the Rolling Stones had people in the audience sitting down listening to them. That was a first, and there's some other firsts that we can talk about as the show goes. But Bill Wyman makes a big point about that, doesn't he, in his book? That they were actually sitting there and they didn't know what to do. The Stones were a little bit stunned there on some of those opening shows because there was no screaming. It was they were just sitting there. They were waiting for the Stones to perform. What do you think about that?
Well, it was it was the beat boom was over. We had a quick joke about Jeff Beck and the rave up with your opening sound. It was people were the 18-year-olds were now 25, 26. The 14-year-olds were now 22, graduating from university. It was a different audience. It was a growing audience. People were listening to the lyrics, "Sympathy for the Devil." Bob Dylan changed a lot of that. The emphasis was on the song and the Vietnam and the sign of the times. People were becoming aware. We want to have a good time, but we're also, these guys are artists. So they're putting. It wasn't a circus act anymore. It was a show. It was people being entertained and informed at the same time.
Yeah. And I think let's give credit where credit's due. The Rolling Stones and that '69 tour paved the way for other barnstorming extravaganzas such as Led Zeppelin and Yes and Elton John and others in the '70s. It was the Rolling Stones that set the path on that '69 tour. It was the first time that a band had its own PA system, and some of the information that's coming through now about that tour gives me more respect for what the Stones were doing. They just broke the mold. They weren't. It took an English band to get over the problem that the American venues had, that some of those 10,000, 20,000 venues, they only had PA systems for sports events, didn't they, Carl? But the Stones took a PA system to actually give give their fans an opportunity to listen to them.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because they were coming off the back of two great albums, so they had a big foundation to work with. As Keith Richards said, all of a sudden we're working with PAs, we can hear ourselves, we can actually play a lot better. So they're coming off the back of Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed, so the whole country was in for a treat. All of a sudden, Stray Cat Blues and Live With Me and Honky Tonk Woman and all these Jumping Jack Flash, Sympathy for the Devil, all these great songs were going to be played live. And
Yeah.
true to the Stones, they dug out some of the old stuff that they started when they were kids, the O Carols and Little Queenies.
Yeah, and all credit to the Stones too. They learnt their lessons from that that previous US tour in '66. Where they had promoter bands opening for them, and it was just the promoters, of the tour had picked the opening acts. For example, in '66. The support act for the opening show in Lynn, Massachusetts had, the Mods, which was a local act, the McCoys, which were riding high on that Hang On Sloopy, and the Sandrells. And, mate, I didn't know this. The Stones only played for 30 minutes, on
Wow.
that 1966 tour. 30 minutes.
Wow. Yeah, well, I was actually, look, they advertise a lot of those posters, and they'll have 6 or 8 acts in 3 hours. And, there'd be a lot of garbage and there'd be a lot of good acts, but it's almost like fight or flight, you either make it or you don't. But that's an interesting timeline between 66 to 69. Beatles' live show was 66, is that right?
60, yeah, Candlestick Park. That's correct.
So you had 67. The flower power and the acid and the psychedelia came in. That was interesting. That sort of came in and out for a year. 68 was a great year because you had, Hendrix, Doors, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Bob Dylan, Beatles, Stones doing really great albums. Obviously, and then 69, obviously with the Stones touring, you had a totally different world. All of a sudden, I think what happened was a lot of the bubblegum disappeared. I'd spoken about this on the show before about Dave Clark. Was it during the Pacemakers? Once he heard Bob Dylan, and once they heard some of these more political songs, he said, "We're out of a job. We can only write about love, pop, and Ferry on the Mersey."
Yeah. Look. I agree with you. I'm not going to argue with you, but I think also we need to look at it. You mentioned these 2 acts just a couple of seconds ago. The 3 key pop acts were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and Bob Dylan. So the Beatles pull finger in 69. The Beatles are in the middle of falling apart. 69, Bob Dylan is hiding away on a farm in Woodstock. So these 2 acts are off the planet for a variety of reasons. And the Rolling Stones are the only act left, and man, did they take advantage of the opportunity they were given.
Well, let's face it, Led Zeppelin were still in their infancy at that particular stage too.
Yeah.
They hadn't quite taken flight. They got big 71, 72, 75 for sure with their big tours. So you are right, 69 tour paved the way for not only English bands, but basically how a PA-driven hard rock stadium-based sound became. It was the benchmark, I guess. 2 guitars, a front man, PA, packed out stadium, proper monitoring, proper miking. and obviously a few little odds, a few little warts, but really good raw sound.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Oh, look, I'm not going to argue with you, and let's just look at the extension of that tour to to some of the individuals. The Rolling Stones were smart. They hired Glenn Johns, on the mixing board, because he was there to record, a lot of those acts, and the Rolling Stones. They again smart operators, mate. They employed their opening acts themselves. Terry Reid, Ike and Tina Turner, BB King, and Chuck Berry himself. They were all employed directly by the Rolling Stones to
did not know
come
that.
on. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so a couple of years earlier they're doing a 30-minute gig on that American tour in '69. They're playing for 75 minutes, and a lot of those concerts went past midnight. So you're right, Carl. It's it's an experience that probably a lot of people didn't really understand what was happening. They were setting this benchmark for like you were saying, Led Zeppelin to jump on board and just
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you what, I mean, it's great to have an album, but like Keith said, you're not a proper band until you're playing in front of a crowd. You can hide in the studio all you like, but I mean, a proper band plays live. What's the point of a band? To hide in the studio, or entertain people? And Keith said they felt most alive on stage. And that's evident with the sound of Get Your Yayas Out. I mean, Mick Taylor, a brilliant guitar player. By the top, so the Madison Square Garden was towards the end, and they were just running on all cylinders. They were really gelling, and you can hear it.
okay.
I
Can I
mean,
just can I just interrupt there and just say g'day to a couple of cats in the chat. We've got DT in the chat, and we've got James from Wales in the chat, good friends of the show. But there's one comment here that DT is making. Didn't they get Bobby Keys? So what's really interesting about that '69 tour, guys? Let's just get our head around this. That was the first and last time that the Rolling Stones played together as a band with no other added musicians other than Ian Stewart, but technically he was a Rolling Stone. But there were no other artists on stage or with the Rolling Stones. So Bobby Keys, to answer your question, came in '72. So that again, that's what makes that album Get Your Yayas Out so fantastic, because that's just the Rolling Stones.
Your '72 tour it was good, but they had a horn section.
Yeah.
They were a bit more relaxed. They had the big plane. They had a bit more money.
Yep.
They had a bit. It was almost like I wouldn't say they were more corporate, but they were more. Or not more Las Vegas or Cabaret, but more. They were more of a machine at that stage, where they're basically not set in their ways, but they were, a machine. Where the '69 tour was basically, it wasn't make or break. It was something. It was almost like their first album. It was something that was new. That worked.
Oh, actually, I'm going to agree with you, and I think it was a make or break tour. That '69 tour. That '69 tour was a make or break tour, because there's a couple of things that I think we should talk about. So we love talking about gear on this show. The gear that they were using on that show is phenomenal, isn't it? Keith Richards' main guitar was that Ampeg Dan Johnson. He was using a '58 Les Paul. He also had his Gibson ES 355. Mick Taylor was using mainly his SG. Richards was playing a resonator. But what's really interesting, I didn't realise this, but the Stones flew in their high watt amps for that tour. But they couldn't play those high watt amps, Carl, because they were damaged. So they contracted Ampeg with the single vacuum tubes, those SVTs, and they had those amps on tour. And there were 5 technicians from Ampeg at every gig, watching behind the back there, watching the amps and changing valves or tubes, depending on what part of the world you are, when they were getting too hot, so they didn't blow. And they had a couple of gigs where they did blow.
Yeah. There was some. I think there was some pretty hairy gigs on that tour. There was the Oakland one, and there was one, strangely enough, in Florida, where you'd think of the tropics and warm weather, where it was so cold, unusually cold, and everything was going out of tune. But they got through it, and like you mentioned, after midnight they were playing. But it was a pivotal album and tour because, like you said, they PAs, new gear, new amps. Mick Taylor, a new guitar player, but just Stones being the Stones, they pulled it off. And let's face it, let's give a bit of credit to Brian Jones and the rhythm section. Obviously, Mick and Keith are the front men, but all those years and dates of touring and clubs, they just, a class act. So for Mick Taylor, it would have been pretty incredible actually to be in obviously he'd been with John Mayall and a few little odds and ends, but that would have really, in front of a huge audience, 50,000 people, he had to rise or, he had to shine really, didn't he?
Yeah, and he did that really well. And he's actually come out a couple of times and said, one of the reasons why that worked so well with him is that the Stones hadn't played together for a long, long time. And he was in the Stones, so it kind of felt, hey Arvin, good to see you. It kind of felt like a new band. So if they were making mistakes, they were, making mistakes together. But you and I have discussed this a few times in some of the earlier shows that we did. It's on record. I can't think of who said it specifically. You might be able to remember, or someone in the chat might be able to say, the Stones sounded awful, when they were rehearsing, they were just they just off. In fact, I think it was Mick Taylor himself. Mick Taylor said they were awful.
Yeah. Well, because besides Charlie Watts, none of them had a jazz or a classical background. Keith was Chuck Berry. Mick was, a wannabe blues R&B. Billy Wyman was a rockabilly guy. Mick Taylor was the only one with a jazz blues background. But I actually just had a train of thought now. In a way, it was like a new band because Mick Taylor with those glorious solos, Keith having to step back a bit, Mick having more time to move around on the stage because, prior to that, they were playing really small stages. Now, all of a sudden, every tour, that was their first tour where they had themes. The Uncle Sam hat, the Leo star sign costume. They were free to do what they were basically went from boys to men, really, if you think about it. Keith with his red rhino star-studded shirts and it was
Oh, well, you're right because you're right because they hired a guy called Chip Monarch who lit the Monterey Pop Festival in the Woodstock. He was the Woodstock MC. He's famous for saying to everyone there, "Don't take the brown acid. Don't take the brown acid." So he was responsible for that backlighting, that stage where they had covers over the back line, and they had lights behind that, which gave it, that dark look. Again, all designed by the Stones in conjunction with the designer. Whereas before, they'd just gone on to, 3 years earlier, just turned up
Yeah.
and played,
Mm.
and then buggered off. But good point.
And the other thing too is a lot of people don't know this, but and I have the actual album itself, but it was the first. So some member of the audience who had a bit of technical prowess went in there with a little tape recorder and taped a show, and it became a
Wow.
bootleg called "Liver Than You'll Ever Be," and that was
Wow.
the start. That was the start of all bootlegs from then to now.
Have you heard
No,
that?
I own the album. Yeah, it's "Liver Than You'll Ever Be."
What's it like?
Oh, it's raw. It's rough. I mean, but it's good. But it's just, it started a new phenomenon, which to collectors and music hounds and you guys like your Richard Fox and guys I used to know in America. Some of them would just religiously collect bootlegs. Some of
Yeah.
them were pretty good. Some of them came off the soundboard. There's some Led Zeppelin stuff out there in France. It sounds like Jimmy Page is in the room. But that was the first tour where the bootleg started. People don't know that.
No, I did not know that either, because the bootleg industry, that's a separate industry altogether. You've got the guys that love the official recordings like myself.
Yes.
No, I know a little bit about the official recordings of the bands that I follow, but I'm not a bootlegger. I know nothing about bootlegging.
Well, bootlegs are great in the sense if you're a true fan, you get to hear different versions, and sometimes they'll chuck in a song they don't usually play in a typical live set, or be some sort of wild solo or something. But there was a show they did in Baltimore, which was 1 or 2 nights before Madison Square Garden, and it's been long rumored that Get Your Eyes Out was edited and chopped and overdubbed and cut up. There may have been some glossing over, but the bootleg, I think it's called No Angels in Hell or something like that, or I don't know. I've forgotten what the bootleg. I own it, but it shows you that Get Your Eyes Out sound is pretty authentic, because 2 nights prior in Baltimore, Maryland, they were doing the same set list, sounding very similar, and it was great. It was great. So yeah. From the bootleg that was started, which was live in Oakland, California, Liver Than You'll Ever Be. They started their '69 tour, I think, in Colorado, then California, and then finished up obviously in New York, and then obviously back to Altamont. But anyway, it shows you the timeline between starting out raw and over. I think how many shows they do on that '69? Was it 30 or 25?
Yeah. 30, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah. And it shows you a band just running hot by the end of the tour, which makes sense. Let's face it. Just gelling, getting into it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and the fact that they had opportunities to hang out with some good opening acts, that was always a cool thing. There's famous photographs there of Mick and Keith with Chuck Berry, hanging out with Chuck Berry in the in the somewhere in the stadium that they're at. But I didn't realise this too until just recently. That the Rolling Stones wanted to control everything from signing up and paying the opening acts to designing the production. But there's a minor problem, they had no money. So what the William Morris agency, who signed on to book the tour, but the Stones. Preeminence made its role by. I'm trying to remember. William Morris put just $15,000 to finance a $500,000 tour, and all the money that was made from a gig went back into the tour. Does that make sense? Is that what you heard? So that's why when Keith and Mick were saying that they wanted sold out tours, there was a reason. It had nothing to do with their ego or anything like that. It had everything to do with the band being able to finance and go on and continue the tour.
Yeah. Well, I did
Does
not
that
know
make
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah?
I did not know
I'm
that.
just well, I didn't know that either too. But maybe the guys in the chat might be able to help. Yeah. So apparently, yeah, they only gave them 15,000, and that wasn't enough, obviously, for the tour. So they had to generate money. And another criticism too that they got, because they were paying a few more dollars, or no, it wasn't dollars, a few more cents more than, say, for example, watching the Doors previously or some other American acts, and they were saying, you know what, why are you paying 30 cents more to go and see the Rolling Stones?
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow. No, well, I don't know. I don't know. I imagine there's a lot of hidden costs, eh? And I guess in a way, like I said before, that was like going back to the first album or going back to school. That tour was pivotal in refining their following tours, because that's what they seem to do tours every 3 years: the 69, 72, 75, the small tour 78, and then the massive tour 81. So all amazing tours. Obviously 75 was a bit of a letdown, but I mean, they're a machine. They're making people happy, making money, learning from their mistakes, and touring off the backs of great albums. And in this particular case, 69 tour is so special, touring off the back of 2 incredible albums, and shows you how good they are, cutting tracks at Muscle Shoals in between shows for Sticky Fingers.
There's a question here. DT's asking, is that when Chuck Berry punched Keith for touching his guitar? Look, don't quote me. It was either that tour or that rock and roll tour when he was in the 80s. Was it in the 80s? It was in the 80s when Keith was organising his band for his anniversary gig.
Yeah, well, I think there was a couple of times where Chuck had a go at Keith. I think one time Keith came off the plane and went to say hi, and Chuck thought he was a fan and went about him the wrong way. Yeah, there was something. Yeah, I've heard a few stories, but
Hey,
main
Brian.
thing is, yeah.
We've got a couple of cats in the chat saying hi. We've got Brian saying hi, and we've got Gav Allen. Wish we had an official video release of that 69 tour. Look, you're right, and I think that's why that Get Your Yayas Out 25-minute video is really important, because it gives us a bit of an idea of what happened. You know, it's just, fantastic. But yeah, it would be nice to get an official.
I was fortunate before I left, before I came back to New Zealand from America. I bought the box set, which was, wow. I think, it was three records or 2 records, a book, a DVD. I wouldn't say unreleased tracks, but extended tracks. Under My Thumb, Prodigal Son, You Gotta Move. So we're fortunate with Get Yo's out there. I think was it 5 and 5, 10 songs.
Yes.
But they couldn't put in all this. They couldn't put in Satisfaction or Under My Thumb. They couldn't put in, because you can't have 6, 7 songs per side. It messes with the sound on a vinyl LP. But imagine being at the show. Would have been so not only are you hearing all these great rock songs, but they sit down, just the 2 of them, doing Prodigal Son, which we saw live on TV, haven't we?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's I'm just
with the dobro.
Yeah, and Keith gets a bit upset because the song set that they had discussed, Mick changes it. No. Keith changes it. That's right. And Mick looks at him. He's a bit upset.
Okay. Yeah. Oh no, it's an incredible show, and they would have learnt a lot. I mean, in the wings, Mick Jagger would have seen B.B. King control the crowd with the starts and the stops. Keith Richards would have seen his idol Chuck Berry, creating that energy and obviously the showmanship, and stuff like that. I mean, like I said before, boys becoming men and men becoming boys. I mean, it's a beautiful time.
Yeah, I never thought of that. I think that's a good point. Yeah, watching these other established blues giants and rock and roll giants and how they interact with an audience must have had a big effect on them.
And it stuck in Tina Turner's mind for a long time because I watched her documentary. Well, it's a great movie. What's Love Got to Do with It? Is it? No, is that no? Yeah. Is that one? Is it the one? Yeah. And obviously they did a version of Honky Tonk Woman, but she got sick and tired of Ike Turner with the blues and the stuff, and she said, "I just want to rock and roll." So her and Mick Jagger go back a long way, and that was the '69 tour. And obviously you see them strutting their stuff in the mid '80s. So here we are, 15 years later. So yeah, very influential tour.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find some information here. I'm just trying to find the video. There's a video you get when you're on Apple iTunes and you download the Get Your Yayas out. It includes a video. I'm just trying to. I watch it every year, but I'm just trying to remember what the songs were on the video.
Oh, they do a version of Little Queenie. They do Satisfaction. They do Jumping Jack Flash. There's only about 3 or 4 live songs they do. It's quite disappointing.
Yeah, it's called the Get Your Yayas Out, the Rolling Stones in concert bonus video. So I'm just trying to. I'll get it. Anyway, yeah. One of my favourite tours of all time, I'd have to say. So what are the cats in the chat saying? There's some comments here. So sorry guys, while I was trying to find some information. The 3 MSG concerts on the 3 discs would be a welcome release. Yeah, look, I agree. And let's hope. I've done some research over the last couple of hours, and I can't find any information about any upcoming releases. You know how the Rolling Stones have been repackaging albums, 50th anniversary albums, and the Beatles have been doing that with a booklet, blah blah blah. So I haven't come across anything like that. Brian's asking you a question here. What's your favourite Stones song?
Oh, me. That's a tough question. I don't have one. There's there's too many, and B, man, I'll have to come back to him.
Well, look, and no one's going to forgive you for that. DT's pretty cool too, because he's throwing in a trick reply saying depends on the era, and that's pretty good.
I tell you what, I was at this. We talked about the Corrales family, and I sold their little their place out in Carfy, and it wasn't an easy sale. And they got out the records, and I put on Tight Connection to Your Heart, Bob Dylan, which got the party going. And then he started talking about the Stones. And then he put on Gimme Shelter, and the whole place just went, the kids, the grandparents, the in between the kids and the grandparents, which are the parents. The whole place was like, what amazing, the people dancing and singing. So you are right, Gimme Shelter is an amazing song. As a press music critics described it, very apocalyptic.
Yeah. I like answering these questions when we get asked them in the chat, and I love oh gosh, what's that song on Sticky Fingers? Oh, oh man, I got brain fade. I'm bad. I'm bad.
Moonlight Mile, Sway.
No, no, not Sway. Dun, 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 dun,
Oh,
dun,
I hear you
dun,
knocking.
dun, dun. Yeah, yeah, okay. I'm supposed
Don't
to
you
be a
hear me
Stones
knocking?
fan.
Don't
Yeah,
don't you hear me
can't you hear
knocking?
me knocking?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Look, I love that. But look, my all-time favourite Stones song is "Sympathy for the Devil" on "Get Your Ya-Ya's Out." That that song, simple chords, anyone can play it. That lead that Keith does at the start, or well, in the solo section, Keith's doing the beginning of the lead, and then Mick comes along and takes over, and yeah, and the bass, boom 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 boom. Oh,
yeah. Oh, what you find too is there's two different types of solos. It's Keith with his really raunchy, raw style, which is limited, and then you have just Mick Taylor just whopping the floor, cleaning up, just taking care of all the loose ends, and just so what a slick solo.
hey,
Um,
hey, hey! I'm just going to interrupt you there. I was watching a Van Halen tribute video by some YouTube guys that we know earlier today. And one of the things that they said, Carl, which was really interesting, that they said, you guys keep going on about Eddie Van Halen, about how great he has been a lead guitarist. Don't forget how good he was at rhythm. Listen to some of those isolated rhythm tracks. And I just made that connection now with what you were saying about Keith Richards. Just a simple, solo style, but he's there for one thing: the rhythm. So even
well,
one
you
of the
look.
greatest guitar players in the world still has to have rhythm.
Well, when people talk about Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, um, I'm the first one to say, forget about their solos. Their rhythm, their voicing, their chord voicing, and rhythm structures are amazing.
Yeah.
And totally seeped in the mold of Jimmy Reed and these T-Bone Walkers and Curtis Mayfields, and I mean Castles made a magic set. Yeah, I'm like you, had a brainwave, brain fart, freeze.
Well, it's Friday evening.
Castles made of sand, and um, couldn't stand the weather. All these amazing rhythm pieces. So, but you listen to the live version of Stray Cat Blues. Obviously, Mick Taylor's doing glorious solos. There's 3 solos in there, but don't forget Keith Richards with his just power rhythms in the background, just holding the bottom down, doing the engine work. Unbelievable. Yeah. No, you're right. And even though Keith doesn't like it, you had a guitar. You had 2 guitar players. You had a proper lead guitar player and a rhythm guitar player. I know that Keith always goes on about interweaving and Ronnie Wood change stuff and Brian Jones, but I actually really like, and everybody says the same thing, the 68 to 72 was the golden period as far as them reaching the apex pinnacle of all albums all albums they did in that period is all the live stuff they do to this day.
But in a weird kind of way, Carl, the Rolling Stones invented that lead guitar, rhythm guitar, dichotomy, contradiction, difference
Yeah.
in a band. Prior to that, for 6 years he kept talking about the ancient art of weaving, and the Rolling Stones, when Brian Jones was there, they never had a lead guitarist or a rhythm guitarist. They just both played, but by them picking Mick Taylor, they created, this guy is the lead guitarist and this guy is the rhythm guitarist. They're responsible for it.
As great as Keith is, and obviously Ry Cooder, because Keith was still in his infancy of becoming the riffmeister. He was only going off the back of some stuff on Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed of open tunings. It wasn't until
correct.
It wasn't until 72 when the capos started coming out and the five. When did the 5-string and the telly first come out? Was that
Okay, so
75?
no. He was playing that on in France when they were recording and Sticky Fingers. Sticky Fingers was the open the key for Keith. Yes, he was. You're correct. Those 2 albums, Beggar's Banquet, Open E, Open D, and Let It Bleed, Open E and Open D again. It wasn't until he discovered
Open G.
remembered again, and that's another show. We've done a show on that, Paul Trinker, in his book, about Brian Jones actually showed him Open G. But anyway, wasn't until he started messing around with Open G that he actually got that tonal quality that I think he was
which let's face it, became his signature sound, his go-to sound. Open G with the capo and the 3 or 4 rhythm chords, creating a great riff. But yeah. I mean, because let's face it. I mean, without Mick Taylor, without Brian Jones added colour and could make the Stones compete with the Beatles with obviously the sitar, all those exotic instruments. The Stones would have sounded like a garage band in '69 with Brian Jones. I mean, they wouldn't have had so when Mick Taylor came on board and with those amazing solos, I mean, he catapulted them to a world-class rock band.
Yeah.
Can you imagine get your ears out with just a couple of Chuck Berry solos? It'd be okay. It'd be a bit of fun. It'd be a bit like Dr. Feelgood, but it wouldn't be. Mick Taylor got. I'm going to use the word soaring. Created, catapulted them to soaring heights.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, mate. I agree with you, and I want to take a step back from that and say, those Ampeg amps that they had too gave them the ability to project that sound that they were creating on stage. As much as I love Fender amps, there's no way they could have got that going with Fender amps. There's just no way.
Wow. I don't know.
I'm convinced. That's my argument. But Gav's asking a really interesting question in the chat. He's saying Keith learned a lot of Open G from Ry Cooder. There's a book called I've got it here somewhere. It's written by an English guy called Paul Trinker, and he outlines a chapter in his book where Brian Jones actually showed him Open G. Little Red Rooster is an Open G. Brian's playing that slide guitar Open G, and his argument is pretty strong, saying, are you telling me that Keith Richards didn't know what he was doing with his guitar tuning it to Open G? He must have known, but couldn't give credit to Brian.
Well, there's that.
See you later, Brian. Thanks for hanging out with us.
On Spotify, they have that. Is it Live in Ireland or Live?
Yeah.
They have a live show, and you can hear in between songs Brian changing his tuning.
Yes.
And that's a cue right there. There's also, as you mentioned, I Can't Be Satisfied, and a lot of the slide stuff that Brian was doing, which was great, pretty amazing for young 20-year-olds, all open tuning. So either Keith didn't care about it then, or maybe Ry Cooder expanded on open tuning with showing chord voicings. I'm not sure, but I'm going
to give Keith credit where credit's due and take him at his word in his biography where he says, Ry Cooder showed him. I think Ry Cooder made him aware of it. He must have known about it. But wasn't really concentrating on it back, 3 or 4 years prior. Wasn't until, someone points something out, and we all know that when someone points something out and you say, yeah, I knew that, but it wasn't until you showed me that, oh, that's right. you know.
And I think Keith was so reliant on Brian doing all the slide work when Brian was becoming more absent, and they had all that resting period between in 67, 68, and Keith had brought all those records back from America of Blind Willie McTowell, Blind Willie Johnson, Son House, and he was trying to play along with him, and he said, I can't figure this out. And I think Ry Cooder, when he did the session, Sister Morphine, which obviously was cut at Beggar's Banquet, but then they later put it on Sticky Fingers, said, no, these guys are playing an open tuning. Or either that happened or Keith had figured out that these guys were playing a different tuning. But then when Keith sort of must have thought to himself, hey, well, Brian's not doing as much as he can, or he's out of it, or he's not, I'm going to have to sort of take, if we're a blues, R&B, rock and roll band, fans are going to expect slide guitar and blues. And so hence Prodigal Son, hence Monkey Man, hence Jigsaw Puzzle. All of a sudden, Keith starts bringing out the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Which is great. Which is great.
And you and I have had this conversation a lot of times, and we've even jammed ourselves together. So this is my Open G, 5-string Open G Telecaster, and I'm it's my firm opinion that playing Honky Tonk Woman or Brown Sugar in standard tuning is okay, but you just don't get that vibe or that crunch that you need, that you're hearing, until you have an Open G guitar.
Yeah. I remember that one time when you were showing me the chords to, was it Start Me Up and Honky, and I actually had a friend of mine. Unfortunately, we drifted apart, but he showed me some original chords. But he played a lot. He was a Keith Richards nut, played an Open G, and he showed me Brown Sugar. Sorry, and as fun as it is, it's actually quite easy. But you have to have the right tuning. There's no way you can play Stone stuff. That one guy that did that strange chord that was trying to beat your acoustic up that came into Robertson Sinclair. With that spider chord, which kind of sounds like start Me Up, but it's not quite the same. You've got to use the open tuning, which makes it so easy.
Well, yeah. You got to be able to go like this, and that's the simplicity. But yeah, you're right. I forgot about that guy. What a far out dude he was. So he's trying to play some kind of open G chord by stretching his thumb 5 frets to get some kind of. And I'm looking at Carl and I are looking at this cat going, well, actually, if you tuned it to open G and just had your finger and these other 2 fingers.
Oh, so much easy. But I mean, Keith overnight with that Open G, it was like a light bulb was invented. He said it was like learning guitar all over again. He was so excited because all these riffs and sounds were just exploding and coming out of nowhere, And God bless him, he still did a lot of great songs in standard tuning, but he had that up as, it was like a poker player. He had a few cards, a few more tricks up his sleeve with that open tuning, which we know to this day, the greatest riffs of all time, the Honky Tonk Womans, the Tumbling Dice, the Brown Sugars, the list goes on. Start Me Up. Far out.
So Gav's asking me what pickup have I got in this. So this here is a custom vibe Telecaster, Squire Telecaster I bought about 4 or 5 years ago that I played in standard, tuning, but it wasn't until I became, more and more of an open G nut. So this had the standard Telecaster pickup on there, and during lockdown I just grabbed a multi-tool, cut that out, had a Tone Rider pickup, and put that in myself. So that's just bolted onto a piece of wood. What's good about these Squire Telecasters, I didn't have to route out because they have it routed out already for either the single coil pickup or the humbuckers, because they do a couple of different models. And I haven't even soldered that. I've just got blue tack blue tack, and it sounds pretty good. But it's got that vibe, and the Tone Rider pickup's pretty good.
So if Keith was playing the humbucker on the telly, or he was playing a single call, the humbucker gives it more weight, does it? Definitely gives it a lot more bottom end.
Oh man, there's a lot of theories out there. There's a lot of guys out there saying that that's that lap steel pickup, lap guitar pickup that he's got in here. That's 99% of all the Open G tunings that Keith plays. This thing here, this pickup,
it's for the solos. Is that for the solos?
Well, doesn't figure much according to the research that I've done. And then you've got other guys, because most of the clips, if you see him, the switch is always in this position. But there are some other cats out there saying, well, if it's just because it's in this position here doesn't mean that it's not wired up, traditionally. It might be wired up that when it's in that position, it's the neck pickup. So who knows? Yeah. And, these are questions that these guitar guys need to ask Keith. A couple of years ago, that guy did a really great interview with Keith not long after he released his solo album. Remember, and Keith's sitting there and they give him an acoustic guitar and Keith's pulling off the bottom E string to tune it into open G, and the guy's sitting there asking him some questions. That's a question I would have asked. I'm on your Telecaster. What pickups are you playing? Because there's all these theories out there.
Yeah. Like I said, because on the 72 tour, he's using a Strat quite a bit, isn't he? With Honky Tonk. Brown Sugar.
Yeah. So the
opening it sounds fine.
Yeah. So again, that kind of blew me away. So I'm sitting down. Not long after that, ladies and gentlemen, the Rolling Stones DVD came out. So I grabbed that, right? I, zoom home doing 150 Ks, throw it into my DVD player, and then the first track is Brown Sugar, and he's got a Telecaster. He's playing it with a Telecaster. No, sorry, with a Stratocaster. Yeah.
So I like I said, I know that, and getting back to your one of your big idols, Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen wanted the humbucker sound, but with a Strat Strat neck and a Strat lightweight body, didn't he?
Yeah, well, because he was so aerobic, so aerial, and athletic in his display with their show. He needed to have, a guitar that was comfortable, and we all know Les Pauls just weigh a ton. And he's mentioned that. That's why he got the Strat. And so, I did a tribute show a couple of nights ago on the channel with a couple of Van Halen nuts, and I'm going to do another one tomorrow with another guy, Steve Anderson from Canada. And anyway. He's responsible for the Stratocaster with the humbucker pickup, because prior to that, no one had it, mate. No one had.
Oh, is this Keith Richards? Is this Keith Richards?
No. Eddie Van Halen. But Keith Richards is responsible for putting a humbucker in a Telecaster, though.
So Eddie Van Halen is responsible for putting the humbucker in the Strat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which paved the way for all those punk rock guitarists, Green Day, and all those guitarists.
Metal guitarists mainly.
Wow. And I forgot to mention, and Simon always gives me a bit of stick about it. But Dimebag Darrell, who's such an amazing guitar player, who was actually told not to perform in guitar competitions because he would always win. His main guy was Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
So they all go hand in hand, all those guys, some way or another. And we've done a show where they all link up somehow, some way. And they don't actually have to be. They don't actually have to like each other, but their gear preference or their innovation complements each other.
Well, I think, even a humble bedroom player is always on the search for some, some tone magic, some tone mojo.
Yeah. No, those that so you mentioned I've only got about 10 minutes left juice on my phone, but should we just do a quick run through of all the songs in that album and just like a quick blurb on each song?
Well, yeah. Look. Yeah, you do that. You. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the available time for you to give a conclusion. You round up because I value your opinion. So you talk.
Oh, yeah. No, so just off the top of my head, because I know that not back to front, and you like it, I like it, many people like it. So opening up, Jumping Jack Flash, boom, amazing. I mean, Sam Cutler addressing the crowd, for the first time, the greatest rock and roll band in the world, Rolling Stones, everybody seems to be ready, just boom, straight into Oh Carol from their 64 the teeny bop days. What an amazing version. And Keith Richards is so humble, he said that Mick Taylor played all the solos. We know that Keith played the solos.
That's correct.
And then straight into Stray Cat Blues. And then there's our first taste of Mick Taylor doing those beautiful, beautiful soaring solos. Boom. And then into Love in Vain. Mick Taylor brings out the slide guitar. How can we, shivers.
And let's remember he's playing slide and standard tuning, which is a little bit more difficult because playing slide and open tuning's easier. And that's my opinion.
20, 30 years later, you see Slash doing that on Rocket Queen. So big influences there. And Love in Vain. So, and that's another example of Keith reworking an old blues tune by doing those beautiful chords to start Love in Vain. And then Midnight Rambler. 8 minutes, harmonica, great rhythm, great suspense. Mick Jagger talking about he's like a stripper in front of an audience with a pole, just working the audience, making his, earning his money, giving everyone a show. Mick Taylor soaring guitar solos once again. Second side, paint it black, you devil.
Black, you devil.
And then Andrew's favourite song and our favourite song and countless cover versions and Slash and Axl Rose's favourite song and so favourite they even tried to do a cover version, Sympathy for the Devil. And then we go into Live With Me, I think.
Yeah, Live With Me.
And then amazing. And that gives you, and that's all Keith Richards.
Yes.
Mick Taylor takes a back seat there and just plays some chunky rhythms. That's all. And you can see the the Chuck Berry inspired guitar solo. And then we go into Little Queenie, which is actually played out of tune, but still sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. And they do a time change or a tempo change, I think, too, as well, which is amazing. The start. And then we go into this is where my memory starts to fade. Honky Tonk Woman, and then Mick Jagger's famous line, we've got time for one more, we've got to go. Street Fighting Man.
We've got time, we've got to go now.
Yeah. Street Fighting Man.
So that's fantastic. But also on the anniversary, the 40th anniversary edition, there's a couple of songs which didn't make that, which are on the video, and that's the version of Under My Thumb. Under My Thumb, the live version in '69, and they also catch that a little bit on the Gimme Shelter video. Unfortunately, that's when Meredith lost his life during that. But just what they've done with that song, slowing it down, getting that crunch, love it, Carl.
Oh yeah. No, that's probably one of my best versions under my thumb. It shows you how great Charlie Watts is as a drummer.
Oh,
And boom, and obviously Bill Wyman, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, and they did such a good job of that song that was the opening song of the '81 tour.
ding 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 ding.
So yeah.
If you guys haven't seen Live at Hampton Downs, it's fascinating because Ronnie Wood and Keith are playing that while they're walking up the steps to go onto the stage, and they got a cigarette hanging out of their mouth
and a drink.
And
Ronnie Wood puts a drink down.
Yeah. Oh, and they're just playing it effortlessly. Oh my gosh.
If only, eh? What a life they've lived.
Wow.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, 72 tour is great, but they added a horn section. They had, and then at 75, it got busier again with a couple of percussions and Ollie Brown and some tambourine players and Billy Preston. It got too busy. The 69 tour, like you said, was 5 guys, new hotshot guitar player, had everything to prove. Some cowboys from England that went to the Wild West in America and took them on at their own game and beat them. And we've mentioned this many a time. And Charlie Watts mentioned, if you want to be successful, you got to conquer the Americas.
Do it. You got, and let's face it, it's an industry, it's a business, it's about money. So there's no problem with that. Let's face it.
Well, let's face
rock
it.
And roll, it's about making money. Okay, guys. So what that means is Carl's got a call coming through.
Yeah.
No problem. So Nelson, nice to see you. Thank you for hanging out with us. Arvin, as usual, we really, really appreciate your comments. DT, you are awesome. And Gav, thank you. Awesome. We appreciate your comments. Obviously, you're a Stones nut as well. And Brian, it's nice to see Brian popping in. And our good friend from the UK, from Wales, James. So you guys are awesome. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with Carl and I. We're probably going to do maybe a weekly or a fortnightly Friday shot. Talking about some Stones and stuff like that. We've still got the Sunday evening show with Simon. And, hey, Brad. Awesome, Brad. We're just winding up a few things here. We've just been talking about the Rolling Stones, Get Your Ya-Ya's album out. Are we going to see you tomorrow, Brad? Are you going to be jumping on with us when we've got Steve Anderson talking Van Halen? We're doing Van Halen Part 2 with Steve Anderson. So thank you, guys. If you like what we've said, hey, Simon, if you liked what Carl and I have said this evening and think it's worth sharing with your friends, we'd appreciate it. And please subscribe to our channel, Gav, if you haven't. Thank you. Great show with Sam Cutler the other week. Yeah. We were pretty lucky to get that. And as Carl said at the beginning of the show, just reinforced the fact that the Rolling Stones were just quiet, family kind of guys. And again, reinforces the comment that Carl said about Lemmy, that the Liverpool guys were pretty tough. Ringo Starr was the tough guy, and the Rolling Stones were just, what did he call them, Carl? Nancy boys.
Mummy's boys. From
Mummy's boys.
From
Mummy's boys.
Yeah. From London and just mollycoddled,
Yeah.
But that's
London.
just Lemmy's opinion. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne loved the Beatles. A lot of these tough metalheads loved the Beatles. So I wished I was kind of like Simon and lived in England and kind of knew the culture or understood what was going on. I don't know. I'm always learning, but unfortunately, I've got a bit like Mick Jagger with that last song. I've got to go.
Awesome. No. Well, you go, and I'm just going to wind up here for a couple of minutes and say
Nice,
g'day to a
nice.
couple of cats. I'll see you in a week or 2 weeks' time. Thank you, brother.
Oh, I've got, yeah. No, thank you for the show. I've got to, and sorry, I had a busy week. I dropped your gear off this week.
No, when you can. It's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
It's
I've got
no
to go to the
problem.
toilet. See ya.
See ya.
Thanks. See you. Bye. Whoops. See you. Bye.
Oh my gosh. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us. So Carl's doing well, so that's good. Always a pleasure to see Carl. Thank you, Gav. The Peter Green show. We did a couple of Peter Green shows. I was lucky enough to get Dave Simpson on from the UK, who's a Peter Green nut, and he's done some wonderful guitar lessons on YouTube on how to get the Peter Green tone and some Peter Green scales to make things a little bit easier for guitar hacks like myself. Yeah. Oh, well, you know the story, Simon, with Carl. He can only do an hour. Yeah, so we're going live tomorrow with Steve Anderson. Brad's going to join us. Simon will be on board with us when he gets up and has a couple of cups of tea. And then we're going to let Steve Anderson talk a little bit about this guy here, who we all know, passed away, and we're still trying to work out what that means for us individually. But having Steve on, giving us some background information on his experiences with Van Halen will be wonderful, because whether he wants to admit it or not, he is authority on all things Van Halen, and we're lucky to have him, and Brad as well. So having Brad come on and continue the discussion too is pretty good. So guys, thank you for hanging out with us. You'll get Simon and I with Brad tomorrow, and then Simon and I will be doing our usual time slot on Sunday, where we're going to be talking about, hold on, I thought I had it. I got all these CD. Are You Experienced by Jimi Hendrix. So go and listen to that album. That's your homework, and join us as Simon and I go skiffle play. Be safe, everybody. Thank you.